On the 14th of August 582, the newly crowned Emperor Maurice found himself at the head of a war-ridden, almost bankrupt empire. The policy of his predecessor, Tiberius, had shown good results against Persia, but the military spendings and quest for legitimacy did put a serious strain on the finances. Confirming his marriage with Constantina later in the year, Maurice set himself to work. This imperial succession was inaugurated by a setback in Mesopotamia. The latest Roman victory there was countered with the failure of General John Mestakon. The Avars went on to conquer Singidunum and carry out further raids. They now demanded an increased tribute of 100,000 solidi. Philippicus, who was now in charge in the east, launched the new raids beyond the frontier. Since the capture of its king Almundir, with no clear leadership nor imperial support, the Ghassanid Confederation was left fractured and weakened. The rebellion of a Chalcedonian Visigothic prince against his Aryan father, the king Leovigild, was crushed. The Romans, who had somewhat supported the rebellion, were by now limited to the coast of the peninsula. The empire maintained its diplomatic ties with the Franks as the Lombards elected a new king, or Thari. On the Roman side, Maurice, unable to effectively support his generals, decided to create the Exarchate of Ravenna. An exarch would now control the Italian territories with the combined civil and military powers. This separation of power had been established centuries ago to prevent rebellions. Maurice, however, understood that Italy needed a strong, independent leadership to defend itself. The Slavic presence was intensifying in the Balkans. Raiding parties reached the Anastasian Wall, where the emperor himself set out to command the troops. General Commentiolus then defeated the Slavs, an achievement for which he became Magister Militum. After that, Avars and Slavs besieged Thessalonica for a time, while Greece was plundered. After further raids, Philippicus met Cadarigan in the massive cavalry-only battle of Solakon, where he obtained a decisive victory. Despite this, no peace proposal would be able to end the hostilities for now. Due to the Persian War, the reduced Western armies could not prevent the next Avar offensive from reaching Thrace. The Romans were on the back foot. The exarch Smaragdus proved himself pretty effective at containing the Lombards. In the meantime, the Franks continued their attacks with no clear success. In an attempt to alleviate financial difficulty, Maurice dispatched Priscus in the east to take command and announce a pay decrease to the soldiers. The ensuing discontent led the army to refuse Priscus's command in favor of a dux named Germanus. The Persians took advantage of that and attacked, but were defeated by the rebels. Still, Martyropolis was lost in this encounter. The mutiny was settled thanks to the intervention of Patriarch Gregory of Antioch. Such unstable finances, however, did not mean that there was no money. Maurice undertook some palace and church building projects in the capital, in particular by completing those started by Tiberius. After an earthquake brought destruction to the city of Arabissus, the emperor, being from Cappadocia himself, decided to favor it a lot. He provided Arabissus with new buildings, churches, and city wars, but also granted it some civic privileges. After Priscus's failure in the east, Maurice redeployed the general to the Balkans. Roman fortresses were constantly under pressure. Priscus found himself besieged near the capital. This dangerous situation was sorted out with deception and gold. Having succeeded his father, Leovigild, the first Chalcedonian Gothic king, Recared, was far less aggressive. He recognized Roman control over the southeast of his peninsula. Hispania was secure for now. In the region for a short time, Commentiolus restored the walls of the port city of Carthago Nova. Roman successes against Persia continued. Back in the east, Commentiolus obtained a victory not far from the frontier. In Armenia, Romanus defeated the great Persian general Bahram Shoban. The Franks invaded Italy again. King Othari took refuge in his capital of Pavia. The allies did not manage to clearly defeat the Lombards, but Othari would die that year. After the recent defeat against the Romans, and having been insulted by his king of kings, Bahram Shoban revolted. He rallied his troops and marched on Ctesiphon. As this rebellion gained traction, Omizd was assassinated in favor of his young son, Khosrow II. Bahram continued his march and soon clashed with loyalist troops. Khosrow, outnumbered, abandoned Ctesiphon, allowing Bahram to seize power. The young prince appeared on the Roman border, requesting help from the emperor. He offered large territorial concessions once in power. Maurice agreed to intervene in the Persian Civil War. Combining Mesopotamian and Armenian field armies, and supplemented with Khosrow's men, the massive 60,000-strong invasion force pushed deep in Persian lands. At the Blarathon River, the usurper was crushed. He fled east to the Turks and was assassinated soon after. With the legitimate king of kings on the throne, the Roman Empire saw its pre-war Mesopotamian frontier restored and annexed large parts of Armenia. Maurice, thus, not only received a dominant position in the east, but also a friendly diplomatic relation with his main rival. By that time, a second exarchate had been created in Africa. The man designated for the position was Gennadius, he who had brought victory over the Berber king Gramoles. Gennadius continued his successes against rebellious Moors throughout the years, but also corresponded with Pope Gregory on political and religious matters. With the eastern border now secure, Maurice could now focus on the Balkan front. Troops were redeployed there, and Singidunum was retaken. Slavic raids continued around Moesia, and Priscus won victories south of the Danube. After that, he crossed the river and ravaged the Slavic lands. He was ordered to winter in the region, but a conflict with his men over the booty taken in the campaign forced him to return to Roman territory. The new king Agilulf thrusted south to besiege Rome. The Pope managed to sort out a truce with the Lombards, an action which Maurice disapproved of. Due to his latest blunder, Priscus was replaced by Peter. Brother of the emperor, but also inexperienced in the military, Peter still obtained a victory near Marcianopolis. Securing Lower Moesia, he then crossed the Danube to pressure the Slavs even more. Imperial authorities had started to move Armenian settlers to repopulate the devastated Balkans. Such a policy created unrest, and the rebellion had to be put down by a certain Heraclius. Peter's lack of experience started to be apparent, and Priscus was soon back in charge. The Avars threatened Singidunum again, so the army marched there to secure it. Humbled by the defeats, the Avars could only dare to raid Dalmatia, and a few years of truce followed, during which warfare continued with the Slavs. At some point, a sudden illness persuaded Maurice to prepare his succession. His eldest son, Theodosius, would be ruling the eastern part of the empire, while his second son, Tiberius, would take the west. Soon, however, the emperor recovered. Suddenly, the Avars attacked through Moesia, taking the Romans by surprise. Priscus was besieged by the Kagan. Commentiolus arrived to help, but he was routed, and the Avars moved to Thrace to pillage it. A new outbreak of Justinian's plague struck the Kagan's army. Thus, he accepted to withdraw for a tribute of 120,000 solidi. The religious persecutions somewhat resumed under Maurice, a particularly violent episode of which occurred in Edessa, where Bishop Domitian of Melitene put to death 400 Monophysite monks. In Italy, with no more Frankish help coming, the Exarch Callinicus and Pope Gregory concluded another truce with the Lombards. The Romans broke the Avar peace treaty and massed their forces near Singidunum. Under the command of Priscus, many battles were won. The imperial troops killed tens of thousands of enemies while suffering limited casualties. Priscus forced its way to the Avar heartland, obtaining further victories. Pannonia was plundered, and thousands of Avars, Slavs and Gepids were taken prisoner. After years of campaigning, Roman numbers and discipline had reasserted imperial control over the Danube frontier. The Roman army of the early Byzantine era was indeed a highly effective and versatile force, capable of scoring impressive victories when used properly. This is why Maurice's time period witnessed the publication of one of the most qualitative military manuals of the ancient and medieval world, the Strategicon. It detailed every possible aspect of a military operation, explaining battle formations, logistics, sieges, ambush tactics, and strategy in an age of careful resource management. Among other things, it also provided descriptions of the different types of enemies the empire fought against at the time. Maintaining the initiative, the Romans under Peter continued defeating the armies and plundering the lands of the Avars. Unlike his predecessor Tiberius, Maurice was widely unpopular due to his strict financial policies. During a famine-ridden winter, the rioting population accused him of greed. The next military campaign was aimed against the Slavs. Peter crossed the Danube, and the usual battlefield victories and raids followed. However, when Maurice ordered yet another winter to be spent in Slavic lands to alleviate the finances, the soldiers mutinied again. Peter failed to handle the situation. An officer named Phocas took the lead of what had become a full-scale revolt and marched on the capital. As he approached, he demanded the deposition of Maurice in favor of either his eldest son, Theodosius, or a senator named Germanus. Facing a dangerous and confusing situation, with nowhere near enough men, nor solid support from the population, Maurice and his family crossed the Bosphorus in an attempt to escape. When Phocas entered Constantinople, he was the one acclaimed emperor. Maurice was found by Phocas's men and had to witness the execution of his many sons before being himself decapitated. The 20-year-long reign of Emperor Maurice, as well as his previous service in the army, forged the man into a military mind. His tenure on the throne was mostly one of success, diplomatically securing several frontiers, creating the exarchates in the west, victoriously ending the Persian War, and restoring imperial control on the Danube. While Emperor Tiberius prioritized legitimacy and popularity at the expense of the imperial treasury, Maurice did quite the opposite, something which, however, ultimately caused his downfall. Now, the usurpation of Phocas would resume the wars with Persia, threatening to destroy the newly rebuilt equilibrium of imperial geopolitics.